What is up, everybody? Mr. G here, the recycling guy. And I'm trying a new format out right now where I'm going to be bringing you guys the nightly news and all things in the world of recycling. So I'm not going to be doing sports or celebrity stuff and that sort of format. I'm going to keep it strictly recycling, strictly original, all news, all developments, technology, everything in the world of recycling. So let's dive in. So we're going to start with this article that came across my feed today. And it's basically talking about all the noise that we've been making around New York State to modernize the bottle bill. So it says here the proposed bill could bring New York's bottle deposit to 10 cents. Not bad. Then include more beverage types. This has actually been needed for the longest, right? Because the rate of deposit just simply doesn't match what the distributors are selling their products for. So you have to have a return rate or a return deposit in proportion to the actual price of the product. Otherwise, people just won't be incentivized to clean up. And so I think that a lot of other people are starting to take notice and it's starting to become a problem. So let's take a look at this video of this news segment.
We are tracking all that trash that piled up over the winter. What a mess. The state tells us it's going to start cleaning up the inner loop and highways in 2 weeks. But for a longer solution, the state's considering increasing the bottle deposit from 5 cents to a dime and expanding the number of bottles that qualify. Chief Investigative Reporter Berkeley Breen shows us how the money works and how the state could cash in.
So here are two bottles that get a 5-cent deposit. When you buy a bottle, the company gets the nickel. When the bottle gets returned, the customer gets a nickel and the companies give a nickel back to the store. But if a bottle is not returned, that nickel turns into 5 pennies. The company keeps 1 and 4 go to New York State.
Well, 80% of the revenues from unredeemed deposits go back to the state.
Blair Horner runs the New York Public Interest Research Group. He advocates for the bill that raises the deposit to 10 cents. It would increase the incentive for people to return the bottle. After all, it raises the deposit to 10 cents. It would increase the incentive for people to return the bottle. After all,
a nickel in 1982 is not worth a nickel in 2025.
Yeah, I know Blair. Blair is a pretty sharp guy. He's right. For the longest, the return rate has not reflected the cost of living, inflation, or anything. It's just been a flat rate for the returned containers. And it seems to be not working, because people are not incentivized to return their containers for a nickel anymore. A nickel, it's not worth it, in 2025. So you're definitely going to have to raise the rate of deposit to keep people incentivized. And let's continue.
And if the bottle is not returned, well, then the state gets more money for environmental issues. So if it's a dime instead of a nickel and the bottle isn't returned, that dime turns into 10 pennies. And New York State gets its 80%.
So this is the part that more or less kind of rubs me kind of wrong. The state makes money whether your bottles and cans are returned or not, because the state takes the money directly from the distributor manufacturer before the product actually hits the shelf. And when you return your container, is actually where the state has to give you your money back, in a sense. The way the scheme and the system has worked out, it's pretty opaque from the outside, and it takes a little bit more explaining to normal lay people, because the way it's just codified and everything like that. But the state takes 80% of the the state takes 80% of the deposit, and the distributor gets to keep the remaining 20%. And so the 80% of the deposit necessarily is, well, let's say in the sense of 10 cents deposit, the state will take 8 cents and the distributor would keep 2. But if you returned and got your deposit back, you got the entire 10 cents deposit back. It's a pretty weird system, but it definitely needs a lot of modernization and everything like that. So let's move on. It's just that's the part that rubs me the wrong way. Is the state makes money whether the environment gets damaged or not. And so it's like, where's the incentive to actually be responsible here? Let's continue.
Based on our calculations, that could be as much as $100 million in revenue to the state. And the state that's going to be looking for revenue, this is one way to enhance it.
When I walked the inner loop with environmental advocate David Mazur, he found bottles that still don't qualify for deposits in New York.
And so that disincentivizes someone to bring that back to the recycling bin and get the 5-cent deposit, because you can't get a deposit because of a big loophole in New York state laws.
If the
And see, going back to that part, is this is exactly what the problem is. So distributors have found a way to end run the law by just producing other products like this. Looks like some pina colada kind of a juice blend or whatever. You know what I mean? Products like these manufactured in the glass bottles like you see there, that's a glass bottle, that are not returnable in New York State, right? Even though that's a glass bottle and glass is infinitely recyclable, that same company will definitely just switch to plastic when it's more profitable to do so. You know what I mean? As soon as they start making a little bit of money, all these companies, they seem to like have lost their way in their environmental, I don't know. So once companies start getting a little bit of money, they start going crazy with the environmental irresponsibility. So this is a container probably from an independent distributor somewhere, and they're trying to make their money in the state. Or this could actually just be a rebrand from one of the big distributors. You never know unless you look at the side of the label and see who's actually distributing that product. You never know. I mean, that could be a Pepsi product for all we know, and that could be a Pepsi product just looking for a product market fit. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. Who knows? So basically, products like these are all over. They've started to cause a big problem by showing up in waterways, showing up in the streets, and around all kinds of like weird critical infrastructure places. Animals have started picking them up and incorporating them into their habitats. Like, what are we doing here? So I think it's about time that we noticed that it was time to raise the rate of deposit, because that would actually be a really big change. It's when you make a 10-cent deposit and include these drinks inside the law and these products, you'll never see these things on the side of the road or the waterways ever again. Why? Because people more or less will be incentivized to pick them up or to be socially responsible. You know, let's move on because
New York state laws.
we got a lot more
if
to
the
cover.
bottle law expands, that bottle would get a deposit. And so would bottles of iced tea and sports drinks and wine and liquor. Berkeley Breen, News 10, NBC.
And when the bottle deposit law started 43 years ago, the State Department of Environmental Conservation said it reduced the amount of litter and garbage by 70%. The state says it's going to clean up the loop on Earth Week, which starts April 16th.
Okay, so you heard it here first. The bottle bill has always worked. Since day one, when it was created, it actually immediately started picking up over 70% of all the roadside litter and garbage that you saw traveling down the highways, on the beaches, everything. It worked really well up until the point where distributors figured, okay, let's just sell other brands and other products that are not covered by the law. Maybe intentionally, unintentionally, who knows? I mean, the products are pretty good. You know what I mean? A fruit juice in a glass is not, it's not bad on a hot day. But if it's not returnable, it's definitely going to get thrown away or end up in a landfill where it can be recycled back to make new materials and new products. You know what I mean? And that sort of thing. And so hopefully this push is going to get the attention of the Senate, the Assembly, and ultimately the governor, who's going to have to sign that law, and that to put the final signature on the line. And we can see about getting this bill passed this session. And not just a deposit for 10 cents, right, to incentivize people, but actually a raise in the handling fees for redemption centers. You know what I mean? People that handle the product and they have to account for it and actually send it back to the distributors. Local recyclers don't send the actually don't send, at least here in New York, local recyclers don't send the product back to the individual distributors, because if the individual distributor is 40 miles away, it doesn't make sense to go and return it at their doorstep for a nickel. So local redemption centers have popped up, small, medium, large, all kinds have popped up to basically serve as places where people can come in and return their cans and bottles and get paid. And in turn, the redemption centers actually return the products in mass back to their individual distributors. So Pepsi products go back with Pepsi, Coca-Cola products go back with Coca-Cola, and so forth and so forth. So let's read the article. So pretty much the state plans to start cleaning up the trash that piled up over the winter on the inner loop, because this is a Buffalo news article, but it covers the state of New York. And so it's interesting to see how this particular bill is affecting outside of New York City and in the outer regions, upstate New York, Western New York, places like that. Let's continue on. The state plans to clean up the trash that piled up over the winter in the inner loop and highways in 2 weeks. But for a longer solution, the state is considering increasing the bottle deposit from 5 cents to a dime and expanding the number of bottles that qualify. That's true, because when you look at the bottle bill, let's go to the bottle bill website as a matter of fact. Let's go to the DEC website, bottle bill, because that's actually something I didn't have in the lineup, but I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. And so this is the returnable container rack. I'm actually going to leave the link in the description if you guys are interested. And so this is the New York State returnable container rack. The actual law is right here. And so it's a PDF with everything. It was under the solid waste statute. It was incorporated under the environmental conservation law. And this is the statute and everything. It really gets really, really detailed. And it is 15 pages long in its current form. And distributors, of course, people with a financial interest in finding an end run and loopholes around these laws, basically have studied this thing really, really well. And they told their marketing departments to get to work and find a way around it. So that's what they managed to do. But these are the type of beverages covered by New York's bottle bill, right? This is exactly what I'm talking about. So the type of beverages that are currently covered by the bottle bill are carbonated soft drinks, sodas, and sparkling waters, things like that. Carbonated energy drinks like Red Bull and things like that. Carbonated juice. So carbonated juice would be like an Orangina. I don't know if you guys heard about Orangina. I used to love that as a kid. Orangina. So it's pretty much carbonated orange juice with pulp in it. Those are considered covered. It should just be everything that's in a container, right? But let me tell you, this is how the law was structured, and the large distributors have found ways around it. In fact, there are more products on the market now that are not covered by the bottle bill than products that are. I'll show you that in a post a little later. So basically, carbonated juice, carbonated tea, just carbonated everything, right? Soda water, which is carbonated. I don't know why they even added that, because like you could just throw that in there with the sparkling water, but I guess mineral water or whatever like that. Beer, other malt beverages, mineral water, both carbonated and non-carbonated mineral water. Have you ever drank non-carbonated mineral water? If you've ever drank non-carbonated mineral water, because usually mineral water is, I think they're just filling up space over here, because all of this stuff can go into the carbonated soft drinks and sparkling water section. Okay, you can even add carbonated energy drinks, but wow, man, they just found 3 different ways to say the same thing. So, all right, wine products. And so these are the type of beverages that are covered by New York's bottle bill. So wine products like wine bottles and glasses. So wineries. Wineries are kind of a problem because they're very far away. So a winery typically in New York State is really, really far in the upstate region compared to being in the city. But a lot of wine drinkers live in New York City. And so it's not advantageous to take your wine bottle, or even if you've got a small collection, 60, 70 miles north to go and return them for what, $5? You know what I mean? And so Wine products necessarily are kind of a pain in a sense to redeem, because I don't see a lot of wine products getting redeemed at redemption centers, because that was always a problem with because distributors don't carry them, like large distributors don't carry them, but wineries do kind of mid-sized business where they're not all the way distributed nationwide. So you won't see a lot of their containers and bottles all over the place, but they do have a return label on them because they are beverages that are in a container, right? And so wine is returnable, but I haven't seen a strictly a redemption center that takes wine bottles. And if anybody's in New York that knows a redemption center that takes wine bottles, let me know. But I've been in this industry for 5 years now, and I have not seen a single wine bottle getting returned to any redemption centers. So wine products are covered by the bill, but nobody redeems them, and they all end up going back into the trash. Water. And so water was added in 2009 um, as an addition to the bottle bill, because bottled water beverages started becoming really, really popular in the mid 2010s. And so they started appearing all over the place. And there was also a non-returnable issue with bottled waters. And there was actually a struggle to modernize the bill all the way back in 2009. And so here we are again in 2025. And we're back knocking on Albany's doorstep to modernize this common sense bill. And so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It really should be 7 categories of beverage that are covered by the bill. Let's go to the beverages that are not covered by the bill. All right, so beverages that are not covered by the New York bottle bill are milk products, wine, liquor, spirits, hard ciders, non-carbonated tea, non-carbonated sports drinks, non-carbonated juice, non-carbonated energy drinks, beverages in drink boxes, cardboard drink boxes or pouches, and waters containing sugar, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like, what is the difference between a container that contains sugar of a plastic bottle of water that contains sugar and a plastic bottle of water that does not? I have no idea what is the fundamental difference between these two containers or anything. But here we are. That's pretty much the law. And one one instance where you see this actually doesn't make any sense is with the vitamin waters. And so vitamin water, I think they are Pepsi products. Vitamin water, Coca-Cola or something like that. Vitamin water actually has two specific types. They have zero sugar vitamin water, which is actually covered by the New York State bottle bill, and they have vitamin water, the regular, which is not covered by the bottle bill. That makes absolutely no sense to me. So basically, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 products that are not covered by the bottle bill. And you can say there are basically 7, practically with all intents and purposes, 7 products, because they seem to have repeated themselves like 3 times over here. 7 products that are covered by the bill and 9 products that are not. This has got to stop because it's ridiculous and enough is enough. And so I think finally cooler heads are starting to prevail. We've been making a lot of noise. We've been making a lot of noise, me along with the Bottle Bill Coalition and a smattering of local business owners. They know who they are, that have been making a whole bunch of noise and making sure that this agenda gets pushed to modernize the bottle bill. It's a common sense bill. It's been up for over 40 years. It's worked extremely well. And for many years, New York actually set the standard for being the state to redeem and reclaim most recyclable materials, actually, for many, many years, thanks to the bottle bill. In fact, out of the 50 states in the United States, the 10 states currently are responsible for more than 2/3 of the reclaimed aluminum beverage cans. Can you believe that? 10 states out of 50, so a fifth of the nation is responsible for more than 2/3 of the reclaimed aluminum. So this is a very, very big issue, because think about how much aluminum gets thrown away. We are a very wasteful society here in the United States. I think it's about time that we also realize that we overconsume so much and we could care less where the waste goes. In fact, for many, many years, we were sending our waste off to you know who in China. And I think in 2018, that was actually done away with. And so now we're really going to have to figure out a way to bring a solution to the solid waste crisis here in New York State. And I think proposing this bill and raising the bottle deposit to 10 cents would definitely help out a lot. So next up, the Trump administration. Everybody loves Trump. Oh boy. So I'm not going to make this show political, but I'm just going to spit the facts and let the chips fall where they may. The Trump administration slapping 25% tariffs on canned beer imports and empty can imports from across the globe. So I recently did a video on this, and if anybody is following me on YouTube, come on down. I'm the recycling guy. But I recently did a video on this. Where are you at? All right. So I recently did a video on this stating how the tariffs would actually be affecting the aluminum beverage can industry. And it's right here. How will tariffs shake up aluminum recycling in other markets? Check out that video. It's actually pretty good. And it talks about this article right here, which actually came out a few days ago, talking about pretty much everything that I thought was going to happen. So the administration slapping 25% tariffs on canned beer imports and empty can imports from across the globe. So it says here, today, the Trump administration said it's imposing a 25% tariff on all canned imported beer and empty aluminum cans, not just those from Mexico and Canada, per a Federal Register notice from the U.S. Department of Commerce filed hours before the president's announcements. This document updated administration's initial February 10th notice on the aluminum tariffs. And so basically it's just a back memo from the original notice back in February. And the aluminum tariffs are slated to go in effect, which was actually went into effect on Friday and effective with respect to goods entered for consumption. And so this is big. I'm going to drop this in the chat as well. All withdrawn from a warehouse for consumption. And so everyone by now knows that the tariffs are pretty much a consumption tax, right? It's targeted at you and me, the consumers, people that buy these products and use them and consume them. So basically cans are under 40% of imported beer, 38%. Cans are under 40% of imported beer, 38.5% in 2024, or 16.1 million barrels, according to the U.S. Department of Commerce data published by the Beer Institute. So it basically says here that 40% of the imported beer, or 38.5%, or 16.1 million barrels. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's try this again. Cans under 40% of imported beer, 38.5% in 2025. In 2024, 16.1 million barrels, according to the U.S. Department of Commerce data published by the Beer Institute. Bottles were 23.56 million barrels and 56.4% of imports. And draft at 22.15 million barrels. So this is a publication geared directly at brewers and independent craft brewers, and basically talks in their language and jargon that they would understand. And so basically 40% of imported beer. So 40% of all the imported beer are actually in aluminum cans. And so 38.5% of that was in 2024. And wow, bottles were 23.56 million barrels. Nice. And 56.4% of imports. Okay. All right. And so it looks like a good amount of beer comes from outside the country. Your Heinekens, your Becks, your Guinnesses, things like that. Everybody loves a little Guinness every now and then. So get ready for the cost of all of these products to go up. In the updated notice, both beer and empty aluminum cans were added to a list of derivative products subject to sweeping 25% aluminum tariffs that went into effect last month. But it lists only the tariff code for beer made from malt. It makes no mention of a subordinate code for beer imports in glass containers. Reuters points out, any way you slice it, the tariffs will mark a big extra expense for imports and a competitive shift in favor of beer brewed in the United States. And so it looks like a painful period for brewers in the United States that may be having to pay higher prices for their empty beer cans, but they may be getting a lot more business because consumers will obviously want to switch to less expensive drinks, and those drinks will be made in the United States. And so it's kind of a very, I'd say, a very extreme way to get the United States to reindustrialize and bring manufacturing of all types back into the United States. The United States is a consumer nation, so I would say it was a bold strategy to start with the consumer goods first. And it definitely forcing the horse to the water at this point. Well, let's continue on. All right. Okay, with the overarching cost increase on aluminum, domestic suppliers also see overall input costs increase, albeit to a lesser degree. So it basically just piggybacking off of what I just said. So local suppliers, local brewers, and craft brewers, independent brewers that brew here in the United States will actually over time see increased business and increased profits, even though their inputs are going up. So it's a very interesting economic experiment taking place. And so get ready, brewers. Them 25% tariffs may be, well, they already came. So I'm pretty sure the guy that bought those 400,000 beer cans, he's probably more than likely needs to order another 400,000 because people are stressed, man. People are stressed and drinking. So basically, I wonder how this is actually going to affect redemptions as well, because if they're going to raise these products by 25%, leading to more expensive beers, what about raising the rate of deposit to get people to actually return these beers? Because if you're going to increase the price of these products, right, you may have to increase the return rate of the products to incentivize the return of the actual containers, right? Because I don't think the beverage distributor is actually going to want to pay exorbitant rates to keep constantly buying wherever he's getting his cans from, right? Their cans from. You don't want to constantly pay these high rates. And so just like in other countries, I believe in Mexico, you're not even allowed to purchase a container without returning a container, which is very, very interesting. And I believe it's like that in a lot of places. So, and that's not because of the socially responsible aspect. That's because just materials are limited, and it actually matters to return your containers there. Versus us here in the United States, it's a very wealthy nation, so the people here just simply discard them, and others pick them up as a means of earning income. In fact, the bottles that you throw away and somebody else picks up, consider that a gift. And because that's a blessing to them, you know what I mean? A big bag of cans and bottles, man, that's more than $5 or $10 in some cases. And so that's a good question. I want to know if it's any of this stuff has played any role in stuff like this, proposing the bottle deposit to 10 cents, because that does make sense, right? You're definitely going to get people to return their cans and bottles if you incentivize them to return, right? And the distributors themselves would actually like to see some of their products returned. You're going to see a lot less people crushing cans. And if they are crushing cans, they're probably going to get rebuilt and repackaged into these materials right here. Aluminum is infinitely recyclable. Okay, so we'll see. interesting times for everyone that's oh man, they're just talking about tariffs. My goodness, tariffs are the soup du jour. My goodness, everybody's talking tariffs. Talking tariffs. They're talking tariffs like tariffs are going out of style, guys. Okay, so bringing it to New York. New York is actually going through some, New York City actually is going through some changes of its own by instating a composting program. It should have been done years ago. So New York recently underwent its composting program, and it's immediately caused a lot of concern in some places and confusion in others about how the whole rollout and the enforcement of it is actually even going on. Um, I can say from experience that a lot of building porters and supers are not really feeling the whole composting kind of rule, because it actually makes their job a little harder, because now the burden and the duty is actually, the final duty is on them. So let's say a tenant of a building decides not to even follow the rules or anything like that. It's really the landlord that's ultimately responsible for the trash that goes out into the street. Okay, and the landlord, just like all stuff that rolls downhill, is basically going to put that burden on their building porter. Is it fair? I mean, it's business, and it's part of the job, and the municipality is asking for it. So that's a new job feature that building porters have to deal with. I know a few building porters that I deal with around my mobile redemption route that are not really feeling it, and it's actually causing them a lot more. It's giving them more hours of work. It's just like the sanitation workers and small businesses that were complaining about having to put out their trash after a certain time at night, after I believe 8 p.m. Buildings were supposed to put out the trash after 8 p.m., which led to waste management employees staying out later. I mean, it's been over a year since that rule was placed in effect, and the city seems to have adjusted to it. So let's check out this video from Pix11, which is another news publication around town. And let's see what they have to say about New York City doling out hundreds of fines per day after these new compost rules.
Department of Sanitation fines are a slow.
Uh-oh.
Eggshells, bones, and meat are just a few of the things that you must separate. Now, keep in mind that workers from the Department of Sanitation are going to be checking regular black trash bags to make sure that buildings are in compliance.
Compost is the separation of food. You have your papers, you have your regular produce. Pretty much anything that can break down in the soil goes into compost.
Devon knows very well what composting is, but is he putting it into practice in his Bronx apartment?
I should. We don't have compost bins.
And he's not the only one. Brandon, who lives in the financial district.
And so I found out that was actually a problem too, because composting in New York City, the bins were actually out for 2 years now. But the first attempt at rolling this out was poorly done. I don't know the sanitation administration that was in charge at the time, but composting was originally proposed and implemented 2 years ago in New York City. People had compost bins in Queens and like some of the nicer neighborhoods, but no composting was going on in the Bronx. The Bronx is pretty much just like a madhouse. I'm pretty sure it's like a madhouse when it comes down to handling the sanitation and everything like that. A lot of residential, private. It's not like uniform like in Harlem where it's just all buildings, no single family homes and things like that. So the Bronx and even places in Queens, but a lot of sections in Queens are mostly single family homes. So that format is a lot easier to manage and everything like that. The Bronx and parts of Brooklyn is like a smattering of public, private, residential, that sort of thing. Yeah, very, very confusing how it initially rolled out. A lot of sections are still not getting coverage, but they're definitely getting fined. So that's the part that I'm interested in. Buildings that necessarily didn't tell their tenants or didn't put enough effort into notifying their tenants with the proper signage and everything are now like in a huge cluster, right, of just confusion. And so let's continue on this story here.
District didn't know about the composting rule enforcement going into effect this Tuesday until we told them.
I'm not, because they don't have like a separate bin, but if they do, I will.
For those who live in a building with 4 or more units like Andrew in the East Village, the owner or property manager is responsible for placing compost bins like these brown ones in a designated area.
You can use a paper bag, you can use the compost bag, which is what I had, or a regular clear recycling bag.
So what's the easiest way of putting aside your own food waste living in a New York City apartment? Let's go back to where it all begins, the kitchen.
As long as you have the bin and the bag and a tight lid fit, just like this, then you're good to go. Just put the food scraps in. So once that's done, I like to layer it up with some browns. And really what you want to do is just rip it up and layer it up just like this to kind of cover the greens, which is the actual food. And then you want to just layer it up, greens, browns, greens, browns. I could take this out once a week. I could take it out every day. I could take it out once every 2 weeks, whatever really your usage is.
My thing about it is I don't know if you guys have noticed, but that guy's apartment looks awfully single male. It looks like one person is living there. And if you have children, good luck. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure families with multiple children are gonna have their hands full, especially with this new rule. You know, homeowners and that sort of thing. Wow. I could say that it's easier for people to do individually, but the more people you have in a single unit, the more unwieldy and complex that it tends to become, because people are just not, some people are just not going to follow the rules unless you make it culturally ingrained in the, as part of the fabric of the culture. No, we're New Yorkers, we're socially responsible, we compost over here, you know what I mean, and that sort of thing. If you make it part of the culture, it'll become readily accepted. But when you impose fines, when you impose fines and things like that, that's one way to definitely do it, because if you hit people in their pocket, they're definitely going to react and respond. But along with fining people and the punitive, the punitive kind of violations and stuff like that, how about continually marketing the need to compost? Like, where does the compost go? What happens after it gets composted? Does it go into energy generation? Does it go into a landfill? Where are the compost landfills and that sort of thing? There needs to be more transparency in the system. You know what I mean? I think that way people can have more trust in it, and it can be open sourced as a model for every municipality to copy what we're doing, right? So I think along with fining people, yeah, because that's definitely one way to get a lot of people to react the way you want them to, by fining them, but also being transparent, also being forthcoming, and in this new system to actually get more cohesion and more cooperation on this issue. So New York is finally moving forward with the composting thing with the composting proposal that they brought in and implemented actually 2 years ago. So this system was already implemented. It's just now they're starting to fine people. So that's the only major difference here. Composting was always a thing in New York for 2 years now, right? I compost, I'm not all the time, you know what I mean? I try whenever I can, try to separate my food scraps from my plastics and my, metals and that sort of thing. But now you actually have to have an individual and separate bin on your property, right? So if you have space issues, that sort of thing, I believe in the building, their landlord or the property manager is required to place a compost bin somewhere in the property and notify the tenants that this is where we are placing our compost now. And that little bin that Where's that little bin that he had? Had like a little bin. Yeah, a
Where it
little.
all begins.
Uh-oh, no. See this little bin right here? This bin, these little 55-gallon bin. Let me show you what I'm talking about. NYC compost bin. Compost bin. I just want to show you what they look like. If anybody doesn't know what they actually look like. So where are they? The NYC compost bin. So they look like this. They're actually these little kind of things right here. And they're made strictly for food scraps. But this single bin right here is not going to be able to handle 60 unit buildings food waste. No way. You're going to need like 8 of these. Okay? And you're still going to... And a lot of building managers and not building managers, but yeah, building managers, building porters, building managers, that sort of thing, have been having a problem putting these outside, right? Because passerbys would just open them up and just toss anything in there, paper, plastic, things that actually don't belong in this bin, right? And how are they going to enforce that? I guess leaving the bins out exactly at the time that the truck comes or something like that, which is, it's hard to track that sort of thing in New York. So there's still a lot of pain points in this system, still a lot of bugs that need to be worked out, but composting is definitely the move, right? Because it's a very good way to give back to the soil. And let's see. Let's see what we have next. All right. Actually gonna go back to the part where he was talking about stacking his greens and browns and the greens and the browns. All right. So we're going to get to the acting sanitation commissioner. Fun fact, New York runs through sanitation commissioners
Your
because,
usage
to be
is
quite honest, I don't
Acting
know who,
sanitation.
I don't know this guy. This guy's, when did he get the job? I mean, we'll find out in a minute, but he's the acting sanitation commissioner. Let's go back.
really your usage is.
Acting Sanitation Commissioner Javier Lohan telling us about one of the main goals behind this enforcement.
Okay, so our current acting commissioner is Javier Lohan. We had a Kathy, I believe Garcia before as the previous commissioner, and I think she was the one that implemented the rule where garbage had to be put out after 8 p.m. And now we have this guy, Javier Lohan. What do you got to say, Javier?
We're trying to get the food waste out of the refuse stream and hope to that's an added benefit of reducing rodents.
And according to the Department of Sanitation, fines are as low as $25 for single to 8 unit buildings and $100 for 9 and above unit buildings. From Midtown, I'm Eliezer Marte, Pix 11 News.
Oh, let me tell you, I could say for a whole fact that New York definitely was having this in the fire cooking for quite some time and knew exactly when to spring this trap. I mean, composting is definitely needed in the city. In a city of over 10 million people, you definitely need a way of managing all the food waste and everything like that because people definitely are wasteful in this town. And a lot of food gets thrown away. I mean, a lot of food gets thrown away. In fact, you have food recovery program. I don't know. I mean, not necessarily food recovery programs. I wouldn't say that much, but you definitely have a lot of freegans, dumpster divers that go behind like Whole Foods and things like that. So, I hope that these violations are actually going to affect large chain businesses, supermarkets, and things like that as well. In fact, they should just like triple the fines for them. I'm not an advocate of punitive um, stuff like this. But, for businesses to throw out food that they consider not fresh, instead of giving it away or donating it, it's really, it's kind of disrespectful to humanity. You know what I mean? Because there's always somebody hungry somewhere. You know what I mean? And to throw out pounds, and I mean absolute tons and tons of greens, meats, breads, and all kind of stuff into the garbage. I've seen it. Um, it should damn near be criminal. You know what I mean? Because there are people really out here starving, and we don't need to be seeing all this food just going to waste. You know. So it says here in the first week, the city recorded hundreds of violations per day. I'm sure they did because the rollout for this was done really, really poorly. There wasn't a lot of public signage or a lot of public engagement. There was no public comment period on it or anything. They just gave people, I believe, a month notice, and they say, "Yep, this is what's going to happen." But to be fair, composting has been already rolled out in the city for more than 2 years now, but just in the nicer neighborhoods. And so hundreds of violations per day. And this is just the first week. So last week, officially, as a matter of fact, last Wednesday was when the fines or the enforcement began. So you have fines ranging from $25 to $300. For $300 is the top of the fine. And this is for multi-unit buildings and that sort of thing. And so for a tenth, it looks like a tenth of the rent of one unit of your building, you will be fined for not being socially responsible. $25 fine, if these are the first time fines, I believe, and $300 for multiple offenders, but $25 for single family units and $100 for multi units with 9 units and greater. Even still, the city has been abroad and increasing compliance since the rules went into effect, according to a spokesperson for the Department of Sanitation. I believe that was Javier. Let's see. Leaf and yard waste, food scraps, food soiled paper. So even if you have like, okay, so if you have pizza, I mean like a pizza, if you get a single pizza in New York and they serve it to you in a brown paper bag and you roll it up and you take it with you on the go, the wax paper and the cardboard, if it's been soiled, goes into the compost. Okay. Interesting. So I mean that definitely it kind of erases that gray line as in what is considered compost and what is not. Like let's say I had just ate a pizza and it's completely like greasy and it like soaked the bag. Does that bag go into the cardboard paper recycling? But it says here, seeing as how it's been soiled with food, it goes into the composting bin. All right, well done. I actually agree. And it said for a full list of what to compost, this is actually a full list of items that you can compost. All right, let's go over it. You can compost vegetables, fruit, prepared foods, baked foods, cereal, flour, grains, pasta, rice, eggs and eggshells, dairy products, nuts, meat, fish, bones, paper towels, and napkins. Okay, so you can actually compost paper towels and napkins. Very, very interesting. Coffee filters, paper plates. See, I would assume that a large part of the waste in New York City is coffee filters and tea bags. And so if there was a way to separate that stuff into compostable materials, possibly that could be a good idea. Paper bags, all right. I guess paper bags, food sold or not, get to go inside the compost bin and not the paper recycling bin. I don't know. Paper food boats, so your French fry boats, you know, that sort of thing. You get your French fries, your funnel cakes, things like that on the boats. They definitely can be recycled as well. Paper trays, plant-based compostable trays, compostable utensils like those little bamboo kind of like forks and things like that, or like single-use kind of non-plastic items. Yep, greasy coated paper plates, pizza boxes. So the whole pizza box, don't even recycle the pizza box anymore, which is crazy because on the original signage for recycling in New York City, so inside the cardboard was actually an image of a pizza box saying, no, 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 you throw the pizza box in here. All right, the blue bin, not the green bin or anything like that. No, 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 no. You put that in here. All right. So I guess pizza boxes you can compost them and that sort of thing. Yard waste such as leaves, gutter, gunk, and that sort of thing. All that stuff could be composted. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot more stuff that really hasn't been added. But with common sense, you can figure like, okay, is this an organic product or not? And the items not to compost: diapers, Diapers. Wow, man. Diapers, ugh, still no way to reuse those. Nobody wants to reuse those. Personal hygiene products and, products for women and that sort of thing. Animal waste. Yeah, so definitely don't compost your dog crap. Why not? I mean, it's crap. I mean, I don't know. Animal waste. Why not animal waste? I don't understand. So where does the animal waste go if you can't throw it in the compost bin? I mean, it is organic product that will break down eventually, right? Animal waste. That's interesting. So your dog crap doesn't go in the compost bin. Not sure if I agree with that. Wrappers, non-paper packaging, foam products, paper and cardboard, glass, metal, rigid plastic, and beverage cartons. Okay, so now that beverage cartons, right, because it's a beverage and not once the beverage is drained and out, it's really you should recycle that as cardboard, because that's beverage carton like an orange juice carton is not considered food soiled waste in New York City. Okay, so the beverage cartons got to go into the paper and cardboard recycling bins. And fines for not composting can range from $25. Wow, how did it jump from $25 to $300 to $25 to $300? Oh my, to $25 to $400. Oh my goodness, man. You see how New York does you, man? They just up the price another $100 in one click. And so any resident can learn more about the initiative on the 311 website. Very, very interesting, guys. And I think I got a doorbell ring. So that is going to be my time, guys. If you like the program, please like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.